From the Fathead Studio in Speedway, Indiana, this is The Skinny.
Man, am I still pretty? And he's like, you ain't pretty, but you're going to be all right.
And now I'm just hanging on, looking at the wall, like flying this way. And I'm like, oh man, I got to let go of this thing at some point.
And then there's one that could literally pick you up.
Yeah.
It's
I'm not really sure about that, but yeah.
That's called a helicopter.
Well,
And the last lap was just chaos. I mean, like 4 wide, 5 wide.
It's like whatever. If you land it and send it into the fence, you're probably not going to get hurt. Bounce and then this insane roll. The car that Keegan was in. I mean, I don't know, it's the shape of the Beetle or what, but that thing sent it.
So I was the supercharger specialist on my old man's car with
Specialist?
Yeah, it sounds cooler than crew guy.
Hi, I'm Tony Stewart.
I'm Mario Andretti.
I'm Christy Lee.
I'm Alexander Rossi.
I'm Cruz Pedregon.
Hi, I'm Jeff Ward, and this is The Skinny.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to The Skinny. We're in the Fatheads Eyewear studio here. Speedway, Indiana is where it's all happening at. We've got a great show coming your way. We have all been packed up busy with our schedules throughout the season. I'm Ken Stout. The big man sitting right there, that is Rico Elmore. Michael Young back behind the controls as usual. We call him the track dude.
What's up?
Had a chance to, we were just laughing here before because we were talking about last week and what all three of us were doing. And Rico was talking about riding his mountain bike. So you've been putting some...
you want me to come back on that again so you can...
We were just wondering, like, balloon tire mountain bike, like, what's the weight rating on that thing?
Yeah. Well, I got to watch for some bridge crossing, so, you got to keep it close. Got to be careful.
Actually, your comment about it being a dually was pretty funny, I got to say.
Yeah. It's dual rear wheel action, weight distribution.
Real quickly before we finish up here, yes, I'm flying the number 99 and LeDuc Strong shirt here as well. And our good friend Kyle LeDuc battling cancer here, so we want to send a shout out to him. Hey, brother, we're all in this with you and want to support you. You can go to 99duc.com, purchase some swag if you'd like to support the effort, and then also a very cool place on USAC's website, which I was not aware of, by the way, until this started. But if you go to usacracing.com, on the upper right-hand side, there's a tab there called Race Aid. And you can go in there and you can make a general donation, or you can put somebody's name and make a specific donation. In this particular case, Kyle LeDuc is what I did. Put $50 in there. I really wanted to see how the system worked, but it could not have been any easier. And I love it, the fact that he's retained 2 of his sponsors. Great integrity by these companies. Monster Energy and WD-40 stuck with him all the way through this, even though he will not be racing. So hats off to both of those companies. And hats off to USAC for having this program. Jason Leffler was part of this program. He had money to take care of everything and his family to some degree when he passed away. But so the money stayed in that account, and now it's going forward to, I believe, his son, if I'm not mistaken, is going into college, and now they're able to use those funds for college. So it's a wonderful program there that USAC has called Race Aid. So, and it's a 503c program. So if you're a business, tax deductible as well. So a little bit benefit for you there. So, hey, stick with us. We have one of the most decorated moto guys of all time with some 56 wins and 7 championships. He'll be up with us next.
The X Games at 45 and 47, those 2 years. And my teammate, Chris Fillmore, I think he was 19. So I was older than his dad.
The Skinny is brought to you by Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04. And American Coach, innovation is our life force.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to The Skinny. We're here in Speedway, Indiana, and as we tease going to break, we have a great guest that is on the show with us, coming in remotely from Southern California. In 15 years, he won 7 different AMA national championships, which at the time of his retirement tied him with Bob Hurricane Hanna and Ricky Johnson. He also had 56 wins, which put him 3rd on the all-time win list. A spectacular rider, and then, of course, morphed into more racing. You don't stop then. But please welcome Jeff Ward to the show. Wardy, great to have you with us, brother, man. Thanks for taking the time here. We certainly appreciate it. Sorry, it's been a bit of a struggle here today for some reason.
No problem. I'll blame it on California. We have a lot of problems out here, so that's what we'll go with that. We're doing good. Just thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate it for sure. Just saw on Instagram, kind of follow you along from time to time. Saw where you had some surgery, but man, did you just go on a 69-mile bike ride?
Yeah, it was a Nicky Hayden memorial ride. We do it every year since his passing. A couple times I've missed it just of scheduling, but yeah, I mean, that's some of our normal rides on the weekend. I usually do a couple 100 miles a week. So it's just a lot of fun to do with friends and old racers and everybody that knew Nicky. And so it's for a good cause, but yeah, I'm an avid cyclist. That's all I do now. And race mountain bikes, and some of my sponsors are on from that, Specialized and guys like that, and Kenda Tires. So I'm still racing. I haven't stopped. I'm just finding a different way to do it. And with mountain biking and cycling, it's all age group now. So I'm 60. I'll be 62 in a couple of days. So I'm in the 60 plus class, which sounds like an old class, but some of these guys that are 60 are better than the guys that are 30 because they're ex-pro cyclists. So it's difficult to keep up with quite a few of them, but it keeps me busy and keeps me healthy.
That's pretty cool that you went on that fundraiser. We had his cousin. We had Nicky's cousin on this show, Hayden, who competes in the Bagger Bike Series. Super cool dude, man. Great series.
Yeah, I followed him from when he was a kid. I raced Supermoto back in the early 2000s to late, 2009, and he was up and comer, I think, in the road racing. Red Bull had a series that were younger kids coming up, and I remember his name was a big part of it. So that was cool to see that, and he's still doing pretty good, I guess.
I read about that. I think you were 43 years old when you won your first championship, and you were 45 when you won your second championship, and you were beating up on kids half your age. What are you doing picking on those kids?
Yeah, I won the gold medal at the X Games at 45 and 47 those 2 years, and my teammate Chris Fillmore I think he was 19, so I was older than his dad. So it was a little different, a little strange, but I was older than everybody out there. I mean, I raced, Chad Reed was racing, Stewart, Wyndham raced Supermoto at the X Games. So I raced all. It was cool because I got to race those guys on a motorcycle, which I wasn't, was not even close to being able to do that in my motocross career. So that was pretty cool again. And I got to race against like Kevin Swans and Nicky Hayden raced it, of course, and other road racers, Ben Bostrom. So it was really cool to be able to. It was a cool sport that took off. That it's kind of sad that it disappeared because it got a lot of guys that kind of retired could still run it, but then it got going too serious. At first it was fun, and Scott Russell was doing it, everybody was doing it, Metzger, and then all of a sudden the Europeans came over because it got bigger here than there, and then it became like serious. So everybody kind of faded back to their old, got out of it, I guess.
Yeah, fill me in on that because I was trying to remember what it was. It's Supermoto. Was that the style of racing where it was part dirt, part asphalt, or is that called Supermotard?
But Supermotard in Europe, they called it Supermoto here. Same thing. Yeah, it was all asphalt, probably 70% asphalt, 30% dirt. But the X Games was extreme because they had a lot of room to, do it out of the stadium, then come in. And then the one year we came onto the Supercross track pretty much and did that track with our bikes with, 17-inch slick wheels on it. And we had to do triples and all this. So it was pretty sketchy for a lot of guys, the Europeans especially. A lot of them got hurt. So we didn't mind it so much because that's what we used to do. So it was a really fun sport, but it just kind of fell away. I was scared to be behind him because I didn't think he was going to make every corner he went through, whether it was on the dirt or on the pavement.
Welcome back to the Skinny. We're here in the Fatheads Eyewear studio. We have Wardy on the show with us today. We've been battling trying to get him on here. Really thought we'd get him in the studio. Thought you'd be here for the 500, my friend, but unfortunately things just did not work out. As we go back and take a look at your career, of course, winning that first championship in 1984 on the 125s, but then 1985, you snuck a championship in by just one skinny little point over Brock Glover. Do you recall any of that?
Yeah, the Supercross came down to the last race with actually myself, Brock, and Ron Lachine. I was a point ahead of Brock and maybe two ahead of Ronnie, so it was kind of winner take all. mentality. And that year we had a 2-moto format the whole year. We didn't have just a single main event. We had 2 main events, kind of like an outdoor, where the lowest score, won the overall. And it still came down. I can't remember who beat each other the first moto, but it came down to the second race, which was, like a 12-lap sprint. Whichever guy beat one another, and whatever, and whatever, it could be 4th, 5th, 6th, 10th, 11th, 12th, or 1, 2, 3, whoever beat that other rider, 2 riders won the championship. And I came across, I think, second that race behind Johnny Omar, who wasn't in the championship, and Brock was right behind me, within a second or two. So it was that was my first Supercross championship, and so it was pretty rewarding and exciting. And I won the 250 Outdoor National that year. So Kawasaki had a really good bike. That was probably my best year. My career was 80, 85, and then in 86 they went to the production role, and the Kawasaki production bike wasn't as good as the Honda. They were behind on that even through 82, 3, and 4, when there was really no Kawasaki's on the track besides my bike in the 125 class. So I still did really well in 86. It was just from there on it was a little bit more difficult, but 85 we had a really good bike.
You bring up a great point, and I glazed over it. My apologies here, but in 1984, when you won that first championship, let me go back a step further. If my information is correct here, you started off on a Suzuki in 78, but then 79 went to Kawasaki, spent the rest of your moto career there. That's pretty cool for starters. And then in 1984, when you won that first championship, it was also Kawasaki's first championship.
Yeah, so they didn't have the best bikes when I first got on them. I mean, I rode Suzuki my first half of my season, and then I rode a Yamaha the second half. And the last 2 nationals, they gave me Brock's OW 125 backup bike to ride, because the production bike I was getting like 3rds and 4ths in the Suzuki, and I wasn't getting even top 10 with that Yamaha. It was so bad. And then they gave me Brock's backup bike, and I led the whole I almost won my first moto on it. Mosier got by me with a corner to go, and then the next week, I think I finished second. I beat Barnett. And so I was going to ride for Yamaha that year. And they came to me late in the year and said they couldn't get me works bikes. And I said, well, I can't ride that production bike. And I was out riding in the hills, and Weinert was up there. And he asked me what was going on. I said, nothing with Yamaha. I don't know what I'm doing. And then they called me that night, and I signed the next day. So that started the relationship. But their bikes weren't that competitive at that time. And so I was struggling. The bikes were struggling. I was struggling. Bike got a little better, then I got better. So it was kind of like a give-take relationship there for a while, where we were both pretty patient with one another to get to where we got. In 83, it kind of all clicked, and got second behind Johnny. Could have won that year. And then 84, I won their first championship. So it was a big deal. And then I stayed there, the rest of my career, winning the rest of the championships with them.
Hey, I got a question for you. What's your thoughts on it today, where we're at today, and the progression and in that racing and the athletes and the stars that are there today? What's your feelings on that?
I mean, they're super talented. I mean, you can only go as fast as, it's like in car racing. I mean, each guy can push whatever that is to the limit, no matter if it was in the 50s or now. They know how to go to the limit. We knew how to go to the limit of the machinery, and it's still the same thing today. The bikes are just super forgiving with the 4 strokes and fuel injection and the power they have, and makes it easier, but then they also make the tracks harder too at the same point. It's the same kind of thing as we had. The bike would only jump so far, and that's what they made it. And today it's a little further, but it's still to the max of the bike. So the guys are in great shape. They train hard. It's probably maybe a little easier. The track's a little better prepped. It's just a different time and era, but from through Carmichael, all those guys, McGrath, all them are. I just thought it was cool. I got to race with them, in Supermoto when they all came over, and got to beat them at age 47 when they were still racing pro. So they can't call me a slouch, or they could say they could whoop me up when I was younger, because they couldn't whoop me when I was 47.
I was going to say, I think it's great grounds to say that, I mean, here's a clear path that I would be able to beat you guys at if I were your age. So take it and run with it.
The throttle, it's 2 wheels in the throttle, but I was at the X Games, and Stewart came. He wasn't sure if he wanted to race it, and he rode the bike and tested, for Yamaha, and he loved doing it. It was fast. He was flying, and I think he expected there to come there and smoke everybody. And myself and a guy from Europe, out qualified him. And then he ended up not racing the game or racing the race. He said he got hurt practicing for Supercross or something. So, I think he was surprised that we could run that pace. And I was behind him on a qualifying lap, and I was scared to be behind him because I didn't think he was going to make every corner he went through, whether it was on the dirt or on the pavement, just because he was riding that thing like out of control, wide open. And then I think he still came across and didn't have the fastest time. And we were clicking off those times like every lap. So I think maybe he might have known that it might have been a struggle, but it was pretty cool that, it's just a motorcycle with tires on it. And, I've been riding it for a while, but I don't know how slicks work with dirt on them. They're slippery. So, you have to adapt. So it's just, it was pretty cool to be able to do that with the guys that raced it and win.
I guess one other small piece of the puzzle is the money wasn't quite the same when you were winning championships.
True. Yeah, true. But, the houses weren't as expensive either. So, and cars. So my parents' house that I lived in was like $35,000, and the Porsche I bought was $60,000. Put in the garage. Things were cheap, but yeah, no, they're making great money. I mean, they're making good money now. I mean, for the athletes that they are, they should be probably making more. That the fans that they get, at each races, and but I think the top guys are getting paid what they should have been paid maybe long ago. But I don't know what McGrath and all those guys got paid back then. But for the time, I'm sure it's equal or close. It hasn't just taken off crazy. There was a point where it was getting crazy because some of the lights guys were making really good money for what it was back then, and it's kind of plateaued out now and kind of back to normal, I think, and unless something else happens again.
When we come back, we will touch on the rivalry between himself and now good friend Ricky Johnson. What was it like back in the day?
Yeah, my SAG card. I didn't have my SAG card, I guess, or something.
Welcome back to the Fatheads Eyewear Studio. We have Jeff Ward on the show with us here today in Speedway, Indiana. He's coming to us remotely from his home in Southern California. Originally born in Scotland. I was surprised to read that, my friend. Clearly no accent as you moved over here very early on, I think age 4, but that was a little twist for me. I didn't realize you were a Scot. Yeah,
my parents moved over here. I think I was actually 2.5, maybe 3, so they just picked up and moved over, had no relatives, nobody over here, just landed in Redondo Beach, California, just up the road. And my dad was a big trials rider, so he got into trials riding here, and I would go with him and they had like a kids sections they started making, so I was kind of doing that, but then I had more fun going fast between the sections. And there was really no mini bike racing because, man, mini bikes back then weren't even mini bike. I mean, they were just some steel frames with a 5 horsepower pull start, drum brake. It was just, you can make it in your garage. Yeah. There wasn't that technology. We got a Mini Trail 50. That's the bike I had in on any Sunday doing the wheelie. And, my dad cut the bars and pipe and straight pipe, and it just kind of, then some guys made some tracks around trash cans in this big parking lot, and all the kids were racing. And then they kind of started a Southern California Karting Association with my dad and another guy, and started holding events on the weekend, and they made kind of a makeshift TT uphill, downhill mini bike track. There was really no jumps in it. And it kind of started, snowballing from there as the bikes progressed when the XR75 came out and the Mini Trail 50 and 80s. And so, I was kind of at the beginning of the, motocross was just kind of taking off in the United States, early 70s with Marty Smith and all those guys. And there was really no road to say, hey, I'm going to be a super, cross racer, because there wasn't Supercross yet. So you didn't have a goal of being this champion, like you would be a football player or something. And so it was just kind of having fun on the weekends. And then as the motocross started getting bigger in the United States and you could make a living at it, that's kind of, that was kind of my goal, as being on mini bikes, was to move into the pros at 16 when I could. So it was a long haul to get there, and I was pretty small at the time, so it was pretty tough to move up to the class because when I was 16 to go race my first Supercross, there wasn't a lights class. You went right in there with Bob Hanna and Marty Smith and Jimmy Weiner and Ken Howerton and Billy Grossi and all these guys have won championships already for 5, 6, they're grown men, and you just jump right in and try to learn. If they had to do that today, there'd be a lot of guys that didn't make it, just because you wouldn't know how to race with these guys, that they're so good. So it was pretty tough back then, but I just kept with it, and like through my whole career, just learning, and it took a while, but I didn't give up.
It's pretty cool that your dad was involved. I mean, probably what opened the door, right, or turned the light bulb on. I had one of those Honda 50s. I was probably about the same age, I don't know, late 60s or so, and I was probably 8 years old, and absolutely wore ruts in the yard. I mean, we just had a small house, 40 by 75 lot maybe, and wore ruts in the yard, in the same track that I was going, and figured out if I went through the ditch, I could pull a wheelie. Of course, I didn't know what to do. I was doing a pretty good job one time, went all the way across the front yard on the wheelie, and then ran out of yard and realized I didn't know what to do, and I let the bike go and fell off the back.
And ran out of talent, is that what you're
I ran right out of talent, yep. But it's funny that you say that, because I didn't have an inkling that there was even a Supercross thing. I didn't know there was a place to go race motorcycles when I was that age. And my dad loved it, but I wonder if that's a big difference. I grew up in Florida, and of course out there in Southern California, it was just the Mecca, as I recall.
Yeah, we had tons of tracks out here to ride at. So, you could race. We raced every day of the week. There was a night race on Monday and Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays. And so and then Saturday and Sunday, we'd race every day of the week. So there was 15 tracks around here that were open, and Racewood nighttime. And so, yeah, it was the Mecca. And then, Florida, Texas, Florida. Down the road, we had championships there, and quite a bit of traveling back there. But yeah, for a long time, California was where even all the fast locals were. If you couldn't beat the guys here locally at California, and then you might as well not go to the nationals. So everybody lived out here. All the factories were out here. So every given day when you went to the track, there'd be factory guys there testing and practicing. So it was pretty cool. It was a good time.
And let's face it, Stout, you're way too big to be riding a motorcycle.
Yeah, but I was skinny then.
Yeah, that's probably up for a debate, I guess. So.
Hey, quick question for you. You mentioned it already, on any given Sunday. Tell us how that came about. How is it that, was that a planned event, or did they just happen to catch you doing a wheelie on video and incorporated it into the movie?
Yeah, I was out there at Saddleback. It was in the back. I was actually doing a trials event with my dad, and I'd got done, and the kids sections were pretty small and short, and there was a TT track in the back there, and so I was just running around doing slides and goofing off, and that guy that was on the the trials bike in the movie that went up the hill with one foot, and then that girl was going by watching him, look at him go by. They were filming that. He was doing some wheelies, and I was a little cocky kid, and I'm like, I can do that. So I just pulled off the track and went over there and just wheelied up the hill and up over the top of the hill and disappeared. And I came back, and they waved me down and say, "Hey, can you do that 5 or 6 more times?" Like, yeah, no problem. So I did like 5 or 6 runs up the hill, and then I just took off. I'd never even talked to him and left. And then we went to see the movie on any Sunday, and there I was in the movie. So we had no idea that it was even. Then we stayed again to watch things.
So those royalty checks never came in.
Never got a thing. So yeah, my SAG card. I didn't have my SAG card, I guess, or something. But yeah, it's pretty cool, because if I hadn't made a name for myself and won mini bike championships and then moved on, that little kid doing the wheelie would just have been a little kid doing the wheelie. There would have been nothing to it. So I'm sure there's other guys in there that goes on the bicycles and all the other stuff that I don't, it's just kind of cool that, I was able to make a career out of it. And that was kind of the start to, because nobody was going, wow, did you see that kid on the mini bike doing the wheelie? It was like, nobody cared. But then once my name started getting out, then they realized, then they realized that was me in the movie, then it became something bigger than it would have been.
Want to get the skinny on other guests and different types of motorsports? Check out our YouTube page and get the skinny. The Skinny is brought to you by American Coach. American Coach, innovation is our life force. And Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04.
Welcome back to the Skinny. Great to have you with us here. I'm Ken Stout. Rico Elmore sitting right alongside has been traveling throughout the country here following that NHRA tour. Michael Young, as always, running the controls here. Michael, you've kind of followed this guy, and I don't know if you were part of the IRL whenever he made his way to open wheel racing. You have anything?
I was a fan of Jeff Ward back in the day. And Jeff, you could probably talk a little bit about the story when you got your win in Texas. Was Chip actually in the Target boardroom, or what? Was he doing a presentation and they said, well, let's flip on the end of the race? Is that roughly how the story went?
Yeah, he just talked about when I was at Long Beach about a couple months ago. My daughter, he was telling my daughter the story about the Texas win. She was there, but she was like 3 years old, I think, something like that. She's in the pictures, but yeah, he was in Laguna Seca, and because the kart series was there, and they were doing a big presentation, and all the Target guys were there, and they were doing their dinner, and then Chip was like, "Hey, let's turn on the TV and see how the Texas race is going," and it popped on like the last 5 laps. When I took the lead on the last lap and won the race, so it was like a perfect promotion for the sponsorship he was selling. So it was pretty cool. And then he called me on the phone and stuff. So yeah, he was with all his big sponsors at the Laguna Seca race doing a presentation and a dinner, and he just popped it on like right at the last second. So it was pretty cool.
What was it like racing back in those days? Because that's when the IRL IndyCar now was doing everything was side-by-side racing, pack racing. I think it was you and Little Al at the end of the race in Texas. It just was a whole different breed of racing back then. Obviously, you had just kind of taken to it, so you probably didn't know any better. But what was that like?
Yeah, the ovals were. I mean, I raced Indy Lights for 2 or 3 years, 4 years before that, and then. I didn't have much oval experience. I probably only did 4 or 5 maybe oval races in the Indy Lights car, and I did really well. I mean, my first oval was at Phoenix, my second car race ever, and I qualified on the front row with Herta, with Brian, and those guys were fast back then. I'd never even raced cars before, till that year. So I kind of got the grips with it pretty good, and then moving into the IRL stuff, it was totally. It wasn't, I mean, it was foreign to me to begin with. So, I didn't have any expectations of how the car should be or how a motor should be or how anything they were using didn't affect me because I had no clue what I was doing. So I was just learning by the fly and being a sponge, listening to other drivers. And so, it was an opportunity I got that I probably wouldn't have gotten without the IRL being there. And I tried qualifying, I think in 95, I ran with Jeff Sinden. It was Al Senior's car from the year before. I was racing for Sinden, for Jeff in the Indy Lights class, and they had that car there, and they asked me if I wanted to go through rookie orientation. And at that time, I think I'd only raced 2 ovals, and I'm like, yeah, let's try. So we went out and did well, and went through that real easy, and then started practicing the whole month, and almost made the show. I was there with when they pulled out Fittipaldi and Little Al out of the line to go quicker, and they didn't, and I was in there, and Paul Tracy I think was on the bubble, and like 225 flat, and my first lap was 227, and then 225, and then 223, and then 221. So I didn't make it. I missed it by like a half a mile an hour. So I didn't know how to work with the bars, or they probably sent me out way too much of a push, so they didn't want me to get loose. But it was just an experience that helped me out. Then when 97 came, I felt a little more comfortable. And but those high banks side by side and in the middle of the pack and just can't get away from anybody around you was pretty sketchy quite a few times, but seemed to catch on to it and didn't bother me too well and did pretty well at a lot of the races.
How did you and Jeff come to know each other, you and Sinden?
It's good. Quite well. He was a big motorcycle guy. He loved motorcycle racing. And then I think I ran into him at, Indy, or he was at one of the races and we were talking, and then he had a sponsor and I had a car, and just kind of worked together and got a team. I think that was in 95, I believe. Yeah, 95. So yeah, he's a super cool dude. So yeah, we
Great
got along
friend.
real well. But yeah, he's
Yeah.
a lot of fun. And I went to his house when I came to Indy 2 years ago, and I popped in there. I was there training some kid on mini bikes over by Terre Haute, and went up there and went to dinner with him. And he was doing a lot of stuff for Roger, I think, at the Speedway and helping out. So yeah, we go way back. So it was pretty cool. And so yeah, it was just IRL was just helped me get race the Indy 500. Or otherwise, it would have probably been pretty difficult to get into the series. We didn't just go. We just held it down, and we could hear him yelling in there, but we didn't know until he got to the door and opened it that he couldn't see your hand in front of your face because there was so much white powder in the room.
Welcome back to the Skinny. We've got Wardy on the show for us. So much racing experience, so little time to talk to him here. But we're going to go back to 1987. I teased this for a couple of segments here. It's when he was battling with the original bad boy, as they called him, Ricky Johnson. And you had mentioned that you're still friends and you guys stay in close contact. But what was it like to race a feisty, young Ricky Johnson back in the day? And not to mention you were actually beating him. I think in 87 you won that. But he won the 250 National outdoors, I'm guessing. But great battles that you guys had there over the course of a number of years.
Yeah, I won the Supercross that year. I don't know if he got second or third, whatever he got, and then he beat me on the outdoors. And the next year I won the outdoors in '88. He won the Supercross, and then it was the next year the same thing. And then Jeff Stanton came in. But Ricky and I had a good 5-year run there, probably, of back and forth, where if one of us wasn't there, we'd have 10 championships or more. So yeah, we didn't get along that well. I mean, we didn't fight or anything, but we definitely didn't like each other. I was more a reserved guy. I was more serious, and he would always try to get under my skin because he was the bad boy, and he loved the limelight more than I just wanted to get out there and race. I didn't need to go up to the microphone and get the fans going, and it was just a lot different back in the day. So yeah, we were just two different types of guys, that personality wise, but racer wise we were pretty much the same. We both wanted to win, and we do what it takes to prepare ourselves and ride and come to the race ready to win. That was the goal. And and he was in my way and I was in his way. So yeah, we had a pretty good battles. I mean, we're pretty even back and forth, but nobody ever really dominated either one. It was always the track suited my style, 1 week, and it suited his style, and then the track would suit us both. We'd have a better race, but it was just kind of hit and miss each week of who really was going to win that. It was just depending on some starts and a couple other things. So yeah, Ricky was tough because he was better at coming through traffic than I was. So if he got a bad start, I never thought I had this thing in hand, because he would get up there and 50% of the time or more he'd catch me and pass me from a bad start. So or if I got a bad start, I'd struggle a little bit. It seemed like I was a little more precise on my lines and a little smoother, where he just didn't care to get out of control and be a little sloppy. It didn't bother him. If I did that, then I'd tense up and tighten up and go slower. So just took me a little harder to get around guys to catch him if I got a bad start. And the problem was he was always a really good starter. So yeah, but we worked together because we were on the Motocross to Nations in '87 together, and so yeah, we worked really well there together and got along from that, and then we'd go back and race each other, and then the Nations again, we'd be on it again, and so it was we got along in that aspect of it. So it was more, we respected one another of what we put in, and as an athlete and a racer and off the track, but then on the track we went at it pretty good.
So all of our guests usually, and definitely the IndyCar guys, talk about it. What were your shenanigans of the day? Because you guys had a jack with each other, right, on the tour?
On IRL?
No. Just like with you and the Supercross, Moto, and all of that stuff. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it was. We didn't really do anything to competition wise because we were too serious. That would go to fisticuffs if somebody did that to somebody back then. But like Motocross of Nations with Johnny O show and Bailey and John, we'd all do. We would goof off, and I don't know. One time we put the fire extinguisher under the door of I think it was David Bailey's room, and then pulled the trigger, which was really bad idea because we didn't know that it comes out that big of white smoke. You know, we thought it was like maybe. So he couldn't find the door to get out of the hotel room and he couldn't breathe, right? Because it takes the air away.
Right.
So
Yes. Oh
stuck
my
it underneath
God.
and we let the whole thing out. We didn't like just go, psh. We just held it down, and we could hear him yelling in there, but we didn't know until he got to the door and opened it that he couldn't see your hand in front of your face because there was so much white powder in the room, and he was coughing, and yeah, it was really bad because he could have died in there because he couldn't get the door because he couldn't
As long
find
as
the
he's
door.
screaming, he's still getting air, I guess.
yeah.
Yeah.
The screams get lower.
You see how they go when they hit those things on the IndyCar, you know, the white smoke. It takes your breath away, and it just goes everywhere. But there was an inch of white powder through the whole room. You know, he won the race. So I don't think if he would have got by me there because of that mistake, then I would have won the race easily. So it's the one that keeps me up at night.
The Skinny is brought to you by Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04. And American Coach. American Coach, innovation is our life force.
Welcome back to the Skinny. Yes, the track dude is messing with me just a little bit today. I wouldn't have it any other way. Thanks a lot there, Michael. Ken Stout with you, Rico, Elmore. We have Jeff Ward coming to us remotely from Southern California. Want to touch on his Indianapolis 500 career as well, because honestly, it was really stellar going back once again into the 90s. 1997, he did earn Rookie of the Year honors, qualified in the third row, finished up third. That is a pretty spectacular run on your outing there at the 500. And if we bump forward a couple more years to 1999, I was able to watch some of this race here. You took over second place on lap with 25 laps to go, I should say. And Robbie Gordon, by all rights, really should have won that race. And listening to the broadcast, the team was talking about his fuel mileage, but they were not telling him what they were seeing. And he's on the gas hard all the way to the very end. In fact, I want to say it was 5 or 6 laps to go. He finally radioed and said, I don't know if we're going to make it on gas, or we have enough. And yeah, you're okay. But you were back there and you were in second place. I think with 25 to go, you had taken over second place and rode there for a long time. And then Kenny Brack got around you with 13 to go. And had it not been for that, when Robbie Gordon runs out of gas off of turn 4, coming to the white flag, you would have won that race. So what do you recall about 1999 when you finished in a spectacular second place?
Yeah, it was. I was in second. I think it might even be more than 25 laps to go. I think it was maybe a fuel stop before the last one I got into it. I came back out in second, but Robbie had pitted, like 10 laps before. That's how he got out front so far, because he came in, I don't know what, he was off sequence or what happened, but I didn't think he could make 10 more laps because we were going to be pretty close to not making it, because we came in at the right time. It was 30 laps to go or whatever it was. And they were like, there's no way, he must have extra gas in there or something, because I don't know how I can go 10 more laps in our car. So I was right ahead of Kenny, and Kenny really, my car wasn't super fast, but it was really good through the corners where I could not have to get gapped, and I could drive in the short chute and then get anybody down the back straight because I could get such a good run. And so Kenny couldn't get close to me because his car didn't seem like it could go through the corners close enough to me, and he couldn't get the run down the straightaway to get by me. So he was just back there the whole time, and I'm just waiting for Robbie to run out of fuel. And I was coming off it. Coming into turn 3. I saw Buzz Calkins was about, he was halfway in it as I was coming. So I feathered out a little bit because I didn't want to run into him in 4. And then I came through 4, and he was on the bottom below the line going, I felt like half my speed. So I figured, okay, I'm just going to go around him on the outside. And I thought he was going to pit because he was going that slow and he was going to stay at the bottom. And he came up across the track from the bottom to the top. And then I locked up the brakes, actually. They just smoked the brakes. I don't know how I saved it. So I almost hit him, and then I had to downshift and go to the left and then go down the front. And then I saw Kenny coming, and there was nothing I could do. I couldn't block him that hard because I was just not even at speed. So I just put my car in one area hoping that something would happen. Then he got by me, and then I couldn't, whatever, it was 10 laps later, he won the race. So I don't think if he would have got by me there, because of that mistake, then I would have won the race easily. So it's one that keeps me up at night a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, I just had it just because Buzz was just going so slow on the bottom of the track. I went around the high side right at the exit to go around him, and he just moved up to the wall, and I just had to lock up the brakes. So I was fortunate not to crash, actually, because I don't know how you can lock up brakes on an oval and not hit the wall. So, and then I just couldn't catch up to Kenny. I was getting lappers. I couldn't get by. This one lapper was ahead of me and kept blocking me. He said the spotter said his radio wasn't working, or something. And I just couldn't get by him for some reason. And I just didn't have a chance to go back at Kenny. But yeah, that was unfortunate, but it was a good run. I mean, I didn't have the fastest car there, but, it was a good one. Then the next year with Foyt, I got 4th. I should have probably got 3rd, and Alicio got me with some traffic got in the way, but I was right there, running with Montoya, trying to get him on restarts, and I had a great handling car, and I thought I could beat him, but I wanted to take some wing out of the back and free it up for the last, run, because I wasn't able to get by him on the races because they were way more, I was just, as soon as I pulled out behind him, I just stall out. I needed some more speed. So, but AJ didn't want to take that wing out. He said that, I don't know what his reasoning was, but he didn't do it. So, I think I had a better shot there. But I was in the hunt quite a few times at Indy for a win that, didn't happen. But I had a good 7 races there, and pretty much most of the time I was competitive, maybe to the last one. I just kind of came in to help Ed Carpenter out at Vision, and the Toyota motors then were super slow. So there was no way the Toyota was going to win, but you can't turn down a chance to race at Indy for that. So I went again. So it was a good run for me.
Great stuff. I mean, I have 3 top 5s in your 7 starts there. Certainly spectacular. And watching the broadcast, they didn't show any of that I saw, where you had locked up the tires to try to miss somebody. That explains a lot. I'm really glad I asked the question about it. I had no idea all of that had gone on. But to touch on Robbie Gordon, like you said, they said that he had gone 32 laps on a full fill previously, but he had to go 36 laps on that one, as you talked about. And I think some yellow flag laps in there they were hoping would save him, but clearly that didn't pan out.
No, there was no yellows, so I don't know why he didn't slow down more, but he was going pretty slow because Brack was right on him when he ran out. So.
Well, he didn't slow down. I mean, listening to the broadcast, they had the team on there. He didn't slow down because they never told him the truth about the fuel mileage. So, I mean, he was on the gas getting after it because they said, "You're good, man. You're good."
Yeah, no, he was way out there I didn't even know he was leading, actually, because, I didn't know that he was that far up front until I, looked up at the pole to see the numbers, and I'm like, oh, dang, I didn't even know he was there. So, but I didn't have the great race either that year. I almost went down 2 laps. I was down a lap, and I think Ari was leading before he crashed, was behind me. Or he was, and then I got unlapped somehow and got up to the front. So I don't know how I went down lapped, if it was bad timing on a pit stop and a yellow came out and I got behind. You just kind of forget of how you get in that position. You just keep trying to go forward, and I got my lap back, and I was up there for a chance to win it. So it was it was a good run for sure.
We appreciate it, brother. Sorry it took us so long to finally get together. If you ever get here to the Indianapolis area, you come back for the race. I know you do many times. We certainly would love to get you here into the studio. What a rich career, man. Thanks for for everything that you've done and all the memories you brought to a lot of people, all the excitement, and it's super cool that you still continue on. Glad your health is good. Glad you've recovered from the heart surgery. Appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Ladies and gentlemen, now you know the skinny on Mr. Jeff Ward.